AFTV, we're down here at the Emirates Stadium and I'm joined by the former Speaker of the House of Commons, Mr. John Bercow, and it's really nice to see you. I remember the last time we did an interview, you were saying it was about 2017, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Robbie, it's a pleasure to see you again, and it's been too long.
Great to see you.
We're renewing our acquaintance in challenging, but ultimately, I think, triumphant circumstances when fan power has won the day, and rightly so.
You've supported the club, you were saying to me earlier, since 1971.
Yes,
right?
I'm rather old. I don't think you will know such an experience, Robbie, but I'm 58 and I've supported Arsenal since January 1971. My first and greatest memory is the winning of the Cup double, Cup and League double.
Charlie George.
And Charlie George's winning goal on the 8th of May 1971. I remember exactly where I was, in the home of a family friend watching. I've been a fan ever since, and since 2012, I've had 2 season tickets, my own and our eldest child, Oliver, who's now 17. We've been coming back and forth to home games, and we go to a sprinkling of away games every season. We're absolutely passionate about football, and passionate in particular about our beloved club.
I didn't expect you to be at every game, because you used to be kind of busy keeping all those MPs and everybody in order, didn't you?
Well, I was rather busy, although I must tell you, Robbie, to be honest, it was a real priority to come to Arsenal. And although one year, during the height of the Brexit saga, I missed about 4 home games. Every other year, I managed to come almost without fail. And my recipe, if you like, my little fail-safe, was to leave at 6:15 from Westminster to be here well on time so we could get a cup of coffee and a hot dog or a burger and be in our seats to see our season ticket buddies. And that, to me, was an absolute priority. And I tended to take the attitude that whatever else was going on, the visit to Arsenal was sacrosanct.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, listen, you was at the centre of all that Brexit stuff, having to deal with that. That firestorm was on par with what we've seen here over the past few days. I mean, you know, since 1971 you've been supporting the club. Have you ever seen anything like this, what happened over the last couple of days?
I've never witnessed such a spontaneous outpouring of fury, indignation and a sense of betrayal. And it's very hard, frankly, Robbie, with the best will in the world, to exhaust the list of potential adjectives. But politicians are sometimes accused of sitting on the fence and not answering the question and failing to say what they really think. But, you know, if you're asking me what I think about it, my feeling is one of utter disgust. And the attitude of the owner of Arsenal has been one of arrogance, insensitivity and contempt for fans. And that contempt for fans has caused him to be held in contempt by fans. That's my sense of the situation. Look, if you love football, you recognise that one of the most cardinal principles of football is fair competition. The idea that you create a new league based on the power of the purse and you designate a set of clubs and say, you're in and you can't go down, you won't be relegated, you're not going to be removed because you paid your fee, is the antithesis of what people in competitive sport hold dear. And much as I love my club and I've supported Arsenal passionately since 1971, Arsenal wouldn't even deserve at the moment to be in such a European Super League. One has to acknowledge that. Some of the other clubs that have been mentioned would of course qualify, but Arsenal wouldn't. But even if Arsenal would qualify on merit, I would say take a wider view as to the principle involved here. What are the implications for the rest of the game? Is this a proper way for people to behave? For a clutch of billionaires just to act hugger-mugger together in solemn conclave, in total secrecy, not consulting their own clubs, disregarding the wishes of the players, ignorant of the views of other commentators, former players, and clearly totally uninterested in the legitimate opinions of the people on whom ultimately the health and vitality of the sport depend, and that's the fans. If Mr. Kroenke doesn't realise that, frankly, it's time he did. He has shown complete disrespect. Now, I'm obviously glad Arsenal have now withdrawn, and I'm glad that the club has issued an apology, but it's pretty late in the day for a simple apology. I think there are two big issues which you may want to discuss with me. One which is very particularly Arsenal, which is the conduct of Kroenke and what is going to happen in the future. Because my sense, I may be wrong, my sense is that there is a deep well of anger at the insult to the fans and the insult to the club, the insult to the values of football. And what about the future regulation of football? Okay, it looks as though the plan has been scotched for now, but it does raise, I think, the fascinating question for Tracy Crouch, who is undertaking her review, and for the government and for the opposition and Parliament and all interested in football, whither the future of football? How are we going to regulate from now on? Is it right that individuals with pots of money should exert such control? I think we should look at the German model. Bayern Munich, of course, clearly weren't going to take part.
None of the German clubs were, from day one, they were like, nope, we're not involved. Don't even ask us. Because they knew their fans would never, ever let that happen. So
no, fans wouldn't let it happen. And of course, in their case, the fans, as I understand it, have the power to prevent it happening. Now, in this case, and it's a wonderful tribute to Arsenal fans and to fans of other clubs that have withdrawn, that they have made their voices heard and they've used social media and they've objected in the most strenuous terms. But there isn't a formal mechanism for fans to prevent this sort of ugly phenomenon happening in the future. Whereas, as I understand it, in Germany, where there is a presumption of a majority shareholding, a majority say for the fans, this sort of thing cannot happen unless the fans say yay.
Do you think there could be, obviously, as a person that was involved with Parliament for so many years, do you think that a law could be brought in that could make, so that we've got a similar system to like what they have in Germany? Or do you think it's too late? Because, like our guy, he owns 100% of the club. I mean, we'd have to impose that on him, wouldn't we?
It's tough. Nothing is impossible. Parliament is sovereign. Parliament can do what it likes. Parliament can pass what law it wishes. I think I'd rather not anticipate exactly what the Tracy Crouch review might find, and the discussions will take place. And I'm the first to concede that there are people who've studied football a long time, and indeed people who are familiar with competition law and so on, who are far more qualified than I. So I think it would be very presumptuous and arrogant of me to say this is exactly what should be done and it should happen tomorrow or a week next Tuesday.
That's what these lot do.
Well, that's what Mr. Kroenke does, but I think there is something to be said for a little humility. I'm absolutely clear about my moral principle. My moral principle is that the fans should have a much greater say, and preferably Robbie be in the driving seat. And I'm absolutely clear in my mind that it is insufferable that someone who doesn't have the support of the fans for his secretive plan should have tried to go ahead with it, as Mr. Kroenke did and others did. Exactly how you choreograph it, how you create a framework for the future that specifically avoids this risk and puts in place a regime for the governance of football, including the ownership and management of clubs, that is more acceptable, is, I think, a proper matter for debate. But if you ask me, do I personally think Mr. Kroenke has any credibility after all this? The honest answer is no.
I was going to ask you that. So, moving on.
No, I'm with Ian Wright. I'm with Ian Wright.
So you think Kroenke should go?
I think he should go. I think that he has long been deeply unpopular with fans. The fact that he's a very wealthy American businessman is not something that I hold against him at all. What I am unhappy about is that I've never felt that he's passionate about football. Still less passionate about... Sorry, start again. I've never felt that he's passionate about football, still less that he's passionate about Arsenal. He seems to be passionate about making money, about shareholder return. Well, that's not irrelevant, but it shouldn't be front and centre stage. What matters to fans is the club, and having some respect for the history of the club and the traditions of the club and the values of the club. And I've got much more interest, frankly, in the views of people like Ian Wright, a great Arsenal hero, or Arsene Wenger, whom I confess I defended to the last. I think he was a great manager. I'm far more interested in their views, steeped in the sport as they are, than in the, I was going to say pontifications, the financial speculations and secretive decision-making of a clutch of billionaires. Their views and in particular their presumption that they should call the shots, repel me. I'm not attracted to that at all. I care about the club, and I felt embarrassed. I felt shocked and ashamed and embarrassed as an Arsenal fan that my club was going into this. And it now appears, it transpires, that it wasn't even the club going full-sighted into this. It appears that one individual of enormous wealth and power was taking that step. And it seems to me that's totally wrong.
All the clubs, because you even heard the other night Jurgen Klopp saying, I didn't know nothing about it.
Yeah. I mean, what sort of players? Even leaving aside the fans, and I think the fans are incredibly important. That's what makes the sport what it is. And I respect Arsenal fans and Liverpool fans and Chelsea fans and Tottenham fans, Man City fans, Man United fans who have objected to all this. But even leaving aside the fans for a moment, how can anybody of any shred of decency associated with Liverpool Football Club disregard the views and fail to establish the views of Jurgen Klopp? Jurgen Klopp is rightly prized by Liverpool. He's a Liverpool hero. In my opinion, he's a great man. I think he's a leader. He's a leader of his club. He's a leader of opinion. He's somebody, I think, who exhibits the best values of football. And the idea that someone at Liverpool can be contemplating going ahead with joining a Super League and not even bothering to ask his opinion. The sheer brass neck, the temerity, the audacity, the effrontery. I haven't finished my list of nouns to capture how angry I am about this. I think you can tell, Robbie, that this is something about which I feel strongly.
I haven't got the nouns of you, but I'm with
do.
you 100%. It's embarrassing. I felt the same way, and we shouldn't feel that way because we're fans and we love this club. And I just like.
You radiate love for Arsenal.
Yeah, and I felt embarrassed. You know, even the other night I was chatting to a Leicester fan, and I felt embarrassed. I'm like, I was chatting to a West Ham fan. He's going, Robbie, we're having the season of our lives. Yeah. And what they're saying that we can't, if we do get in the top four. Yeah. We wouldn't be able to go in the Champions League unless we're invited in. Yeah. That was the other thing.
Because we don't have the financial muscle. We're not part of the chosen few. And, in my experience, I may have got this wrong and somebody will correct me if I have. I can't recall previously West Ham finishing above Arsenal. It's probably happened, but not very often.
Not in the Premier League as far as I know.
I don't think since 1992.
Yeah, so
but West Ham are having a great season and they deserve to rise or fall
if they make it
on merit. And the point is that this idea can't be toyed with, it can't be amended, it can't be improved. The whole principle of this European Super League idea is wrong and rotten, because the whole principle is that money buys access. And it seems to me that, quite simply, that is wrong, and it has to be regarded, Robbie, as unamendable and non-negotiable. So I think we've got to put an end to that and hope that there isn't another attempt. But I think that the government in the coming weeks and months, working hopefully collaboratively with the opposition, it shouldn't be a party political matter, has got to ask, well, what sort of structure do we want for our football? What should govern ownership? What should be the rules?
You've got some friends there, have a word.
Well, I think
have a word on behalf of the fans.
I mean, actually, to be fair, I think the Labour manifesto at the last election talked about a much greater role for fans. There's an idea that there should be fans representatives on boards.
And to be fair, both leaders, didn't they? Like Boris Johnson came out very, very strong. Keir Starmer,
I don't know about Boris's footballing passion. I don't know, genuinely. I've played tennis with Boris Johnson. He's better at politics than he is at tennis. I don't know where Boris stands on Arsenal. I don't know, but Keir Starmer, I think, is an Arsenal fan. Yeah. And of course, as everybody knows, Jeremy Corbyn was an Arsenal fan. Certainly, I'd like to play my part in. Yeah, no, they came out. A lot of people
fair play
have
to them.
To
fair play to the government. They came out very, very strongly. They heard what fans had to say, and they were going to take action. And I think that helped to tip the balance and really stop this thing. I want to ask you before we go.
Sure.
Something more nice, on a more nicer tip. Something that actually matters now. And at the start of this week, it didn't even matter, but now it matters again. We've got a big game next week in the Europa League, right? Semi-finals against Villarreal. Unai Emery, the old boss here. I see that on the back of your top, you've got Saka on that. it's a huge game for Arsenal now, because if we do win the Europa League, we can actually get into the Champions League. We don't have to buy our way into this one. We can earn our way into this one. But how big a game is that for you?
Oh, it's the biggest game of the season. In fact, those two games, the away tie and then the home tie, are without question the biggest games of the season. We've had a season that I would call, I don't mean it disrespectfully, the players did their best and Mikel Arteta's done his best. We've had a season that I would characterise as a nothing. And it's become a nothing in the sense that we're mid-table or perhaps just above, and that's whereabout we're likely to finish, hopefully a bit better if we have a good end streak, but we're clearly going to struggle like hell to get in the top four. It's not unachievable, but it's going to be very tough. Equally, we're not in the slightest danger of relegation, so there's no great prize to be won in the Premier League. We're out of the FA Cup, out of the Carabao Cup, and so it's all about this clash. And of course, there's an added spice that has been lobbed into the pot by virtue of the fact that it's against Villarreal and Unai Emery, who made a reasonable start, and then it seemed to me he faded away. I got the impression that he didn't have the dressing room with him. Arteta's had a tough time and he's going at it hell for leather. I feel some hope, because I think that when Arsenal really show up on the big occasion, they can impress, they can perform. And if you think of the previous round, frankly, we had a pretty feeble first leg and conceded a goal very late on and managed only 1-1, but we then went to Prague and were superb. Absolutely iconic performance. So I think there's every chance, but we really need everybody to go at it hammer and tongs. And I think it's a common thread. One of your colleagues said to me just before this interview started that this year it's been the Sackers, the Smith Rowes and others who've in a sense been holding the torch aloft and carrying the team, and that's great, encouraged I think and inspired to some degree by Alex Lacazette, but it's an occasion on which that first leg and then the second leg, everybody, be he youngster, be he new acquisition, be he long-standing and older star, has got to step up to the plate. There must be no walking round the pitch, if I can use an analogy from a few years ago when some of Arsenal's great players would go AWOL in the middle of a match and just be found walking around the pitch. Well, that is just straightforwardly unacceptable. Everybody's got to be putting in 110% and going for it. And do I think we can win? I think Villarreal are a perfectly decent team. I don't think they're an exceptional team. And I think if Arsenal fire on all cylinders with the range and wealth of talent that we've got, the sort of eclectic mix of different types of player that we have at our disposal, there's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't get to the final and pick up the trophy and get into the Champions League that way.
The right way.
Not as a result of some grubby deal which makes us feel unclean, but as a result of success in a fair fight. And as you know, Robbie, I think I've had reason to say this to you before, and we've empathised with each other on the point, to be a football fan is to travel in hope. You have your good days and your bad days, your successes and your failures, your triumphs and your miseries, and you always just have to look forward to the next match. And by a country mile, those two ties, the semi-final of the Europa League, are the biggest matches of the season, and we've got to shape up and show what we can do. We've got the ability, we've got to have the will, and we've got to have the teamwork and leadership on the pitch to make the difference on the days.
John, pleasure. I think you just finished it off perfectly. Those games mean something. Success, winning things, Stan Kroenke, right? That's what it's all about. Emotions of football fans. That's what it's all about. And John, you summed it up perfectly. And it's always a pleasure to see you.
Is that all right?
And
you happy?
Fantastic.
Good.
Brilliant.